I should have brought my fedora since you're wearing a hat.
Yeah, you should have brought it.
Yeah. Well, I have one in the car, but it's not the right one that I would want to wear for it.
Yeah.
That's my dress fedora. I need to have the everyday fedora on.
Yeah, the fedora. I think those are freaking badass.
Yeah.
I've worn a fedora, and as soon as I put it on, I'm like, God, I feel more stylish with it.
Well, it takes a certain personality to wear a fedora. You got to have a certain sense of confidence to you.
Yeah.
Because fedoras are not worn these days like they used to. They're extremely popular in the 20s and 30s and started to phase out later on. And so, again, to see someone wear a fedora makes you look at them a little bit, which is a good thing. Or if they don't wear it right, then it's a bad thing. It just depends.
Well, you got the great face and head and beard for it.
That's what happens. I decided that I need to start shaving my head because I was going bald and had an opportunity to rebrand myself. And there's a story behind my branding. And I put on a fedora and I'm like, hey, it actually works with the beard and face structure and the head structure. Because if you don't have the right head structure, one, you don't look good bald. Two, you don't look good wearing a fedora. So seems to be I was meant to wear a fedora.
You're blessed.
I'm
It's your
blessed.
calling.
I'm blessed to wear a fedora.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talk about, what do you think is your most underrated comedy movie? Because I just got back from the comedy club last night at the Spokane Comedy Club. I watched a comedian come in, and he was pretty funny. And he was rocking a fedora too.
Gosh. I'm going to have to look it up because there's a comedy movie that not a lot of people, the Grimsby Brothers.
Okay.
So it's a comedy based over in England, and it was a pretty high production, but again, not many talked about it. It came out probably, let's say 10 years ago. And it's this brothers from Grimsby who were these orphans, and one of them got shipped off to a very fancy home and ended up becoming a spy, and the other one stayed home in his town of Grimsby and just became a model citizen, was say, for that area, and goes to the adventure of them connecting, but then trying to have some outrageous adventures. And it's pretty graphic in the aspect of some of the things that they do. But to me, it's hilarious because it's very adulterated. Definitely don't want to bring children to it. Yeah. Fun. But they just go through the most random adventures. And, at the end where they're at an arena, and for them to save the public, the whole crowd, from this virus that is stuffed in a rocket, a firework rocket, that they have nowhere else to put it, and it has to go in a secured, sealed location. So what they decide to do is they decide to sit on said rockets so that it goes off in a secured location, and they get shot up into the atmosphere with it. So to me, it's stupid funny stuff. And that's sometimes for me, I just love the stupid stuff that it's just like, it's so stupid that it's hilarious. So yeah, Grimsby Bros. That's a underrated comedy that not that many people know about, but it's a pretty good movie. I like it.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think ones with, it's called, first off, Norbit. I think Norbit, I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Yeah, I've never seen that one.
Yeah, that one's really underrated. But there's an older one that I'd love to see again. It's called Almost Heroes, and it's with Chris Farley.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Matthew Perry. Yeah.
Okay.
And they're like parodying Lewis and Clark.
Oh, I haven't seen that one. I'll have to take a look at
funny.
that.
So that brings up another point. Where do you usually watch your videos?
When I do watch movies and TV, I don't watch that much TV anymore just because of how busy I am in life. But if I'm going to go to a new premiere, I'll definitely go to the IMAX or the Dolby, screens, just so I can get the experience of watching a brand new movie. It has to be a certain type of movie or I won't go. I'll wait for it to come out on video or on demand now. But these days it's either Netflix or I watch a lot of YouTube, because I love it when people are talking about DIY stuff on YouTube. or they're exploring abandoned towns, or just traveling, or just camping out in the middle of nowhere type thing, like survival type episodes. For me, I love seeing that kind of home production, because it's so much more personalized to that person, so you get to see their story. A lot of the things that are out on, Hulu, Netflix, and all the different things, this is really not a good story for me to really watch anymore, unless it's really a good story. But to me, I just love watching YouTube. This stuff on there, they have some good stuff on there. Just artists that just want to tell their story, whatever it may be. So to me, yeah, that's kind of what about yourself?
Yeah, I love YouTube too. My first thing, so I go through these cycles of Netflix, and then I'll watch Netflix, and my Netflix has some good shows, and then I'll just watch all the shows that I think are good, but Netflix's algorithm has really messed it up for me, because it just overfits. It just feeds me more of the same type of show.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't really like that show. I want to be seen, I want to see more selection. So when I go to family members' houses, I check out their Netflix accounts, and I'm seeing other Netflix shows that I had no idea that they had.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
Yeah, and so it just gets annoying. I wish that it was just a non-personalized algorithm.
Yeah, whenever I've gone on vacation and gone to vacation rentals, and they'll have a Netflix account that is for guests, and I'll go on there and I'm like, wow, I've never seen this on Netflix, for whatever, and I have to write it down or save it just so that I can watch it later on. Yeah, because usually, again, like you said, the algorithm, it learns what you want to watch, and usually for me, it's the same stuff, just different actors, but same type of storyline. I want a little bit more variety, but the algorithm is trying to push content that it thinks that you'll watch based off of your previous watch history, even though it hasn't really been the best thing for you to watch. Yeah. So yeah, I like that concept of going to family members or going to somewhere else and looking at their browsing history. That could cause some issues too, because I've been I was at a run related to Netflix. I had a business meeting probably 6-7 years ago with a business partner of mine, and we were talking, and I said, hey, I'm going to bring up a website real quick so we can do a presentation. And so I started typing in on a computer, didn't know who it belonged to, just a computer, a laptop, started typing in, and I had it on the big screen so everybody can see, and they're looking at the screen. And unfortunately, unbeknownst to me, that was their personal computer. And since I typed in a certain keyword, beginning of a keyword, a search history showed up of different websites that they would be viewing. And there was about 10 people within that room that all saw his search engine history. And it was kind of embarrassing for me, because it was a brand new relationship that I was trying to develop with this guy. And all of a sudden, I just exposed his whole entire internet history that starts with the letter P on, his browser history. And it's I had to, I went to the next thing, tried to just, act like nothing happened, but I could tell on his face he was flustered. And then after the meeting, I was like, listen, I have to apologize, because my sarcastic mouth was like, oh, look, someone really needs to lock down this company computer. Someone's been having a little extra fun time at work. And
you're just fucking really digging it.
I just did it because I didn't know it was his laptop. And he looks at me and he's like, that's my personal laptop. And I was like, oh, shit.
So you shouldn't have said that.
I was like, oh, no, this relationship's over. So after the meeting, I went out in the hall with him. I was like, I am very sorry. I didn't know. I thought I was working off a company computer, and I was just trying to bring kind of some humor to the situation to diffuse. And he's like, nah, it's all good. I shouldn't have brought my personal computer in. I should have deleted the history if that was someone else was going to use it. So it's all good. But I was just like, wow, that could have ended really badly if that person didn't have a sense of humor. So
AI News Interruption. Today in AI News, the dominant database company Oracle is procuring 3 modular nuclear power generators and designing a data center that will require more than a gigawatt of electricity. All this to deal with the power grid demand for hosting large language models like Gemini, ChatGPT, and BART. At the end of the day, all tech giants need the cloud compute space of Oracle in some way or form.
it's really good. We have a good friendship now, and I still constantly make fun of him of that story whenever it comes up about his search engine history. But again, it's because of the algorithm. It was thinking I was trying to type in that website, so it automatically popped up the rest of the keywords. And I was like, oops, this isn't it. This is not what we're showing today in class. So that was funny to me.
The unintentional doxing.
Yes. Yeah. So that was definitely a lesson of kind of humility on my side to not try to make fun of someone's situation when I don't know what situation it belongs to.
Oh, yeah.
So just trying to quickly just bypass it, not even say anything, not even bring attention to it. But I like to make fun of things when I can. So
you're very professional and politically correct. I wouldn't say that. No, that's not.
Well,
I'm not going to say. You're more politically correct than I am. You're more professional than me.
Well, I've worked in the professional market and field since 2008. I've been in the public eye for a long time. That I've just learned that you can have private discussions with individuals that you know and trust extremely well. But when you're out in public, or if you're with people that you just don't know that well, that you probably should put on that political correctness a little bit, or just have that professionalism. Because again, interpretations can mean a lot of different things. And if I'm having a conversation, and I'm having a conversation with you, and if someone were to oversee that conversation without knowing the context of the conversation, they could take it way out of scenario and use that against me in some form or fashion, or spread rumors about me without knowing the context of the conversation. So it is very important for me, especially with being my industry, with what I do, to make sure that if I do have discussions, regardless of what it is to have that kind of tactfulness, because it's bitten me in the ass many times over in my younger years of my career, not having that skill set of awareness and having to eat egg several single times by not being aware of what was being said or what could be misconstrued. So I'm very aware of that.
Mm-hmm. And good on you. That's very wise, because there's a lot of times in my life where I've been more proud of the times I've kept my mouth shut.
Yeah.
And didn't say nothing. I'm like, thank God I just kept my fucking mouth shut.
That's some of the hardest things to learn, is when to keep your mouth shut, essentially, and when to say something. There's a time and place to say something, and sometimes withholding your tongue and using it for another situation is actually better. I've been put in situations many times over in my professional career and in my personal life where people were expecting me to say something out of an emotional response, to use that against me. But, I ain't no dummy. I know when I'm being set up in certain situations to try to get them to say something that they can take out of context later. So, again, it's been very present in my mind to make sure that I avoid those situations and not let people set me up, because I have had that happen before, and it sucks to be put in those situations. So anybody who's, looking to really step up their game in their professional career or in their personal life is, unfortunately, words do matter. Mm-hmm. And the old saying, sticks and stones might break my bones, but your words will never hurt me. That was something that was told to me many times growing up. But again, it kind of is a lie a little bit. Now, words can affect people in many different ways, positive or negative. Mm-hmm. And it really is up to them on how they handle a word. But to be a responsible human being, you do need to be cognizant of what you say, because it can hurt people, even if you didn't have the intention of hurting someone. So, yeah.
That means you have very good interpersonal skills and emotional intelligence.
Some form of intelligence, yes.
Well, that's good. That's a good way to put it. I that's one thing I've been like struggling with too, is what just my adjustment back into civilian society from the military. Like how every interaction I go to is a social experiment, and there's times where I'm just like, man, that failed. Thank God I didn't do nothing for money. Thank God I'm not working for money. Or whatever. Or I've been fired from jobs for miscommunications with management, and I've realized that you shouldn't cuss a lot, even though I do, because even if you're not cussing at somebody, they will take it that you are cussing at them, not as part of your normal vernacular. Yeah, you're right, getting emotional and people taking advantage of that. So have you ever heard of Robert Greene's Laws of Human Nature?
Maybe, but maybe not. Yeah. So it just comes down to the basics that if you are in good company, friends, and they know you have a sailor's mouth, then that's who you are. But essentially you need to have different hats, per se, that you put on, that if you are in a public setting, that depending on how you want to be interpreted and how you want to be perceived, you need to act a certain way, and your vocabulary has to match the way that you want to be perceived. The same thing within an employment situation or just a business situation, that, again, if you're among friends at a work environment and they're cussing too, and everyone knows is on the same page, then sure, go ahead. That's completely fine. But if your vocabulary doesn't match everyone else's, even though in your own mind you have no ill thought about it, but people don't know your mind, right? And so if they're thinking like, wow, this guy has a shitty attitude, he's cussing all the time, it's just, wow, this doesn't fit with the culture, because everything is about culture these days.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if that's how it is, you probably will get mistreated, which will cause other issues, or just get fired because you don't fit with the culture. So it's biggest thing that anybody can do in life is sit and listen and just watch the environment that you're in. And almost that chameleon, there's a lot of different books that talk about being the chameleon in the group, and just being able to adapt your own personality. You still have your own flares of your personality that make you unique for who you are, but adapting your personality to the people that are around you to make sure that you can fit in and make sure that you can fit kind of within those societal norms to make sure that you can continue to grow within that group. Because if you don't, then you're almost ostracizing yourself from that group.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have definitely done that. I have put my foot in my mouth. I've been ostracized from groups for speaking my mind. It is what it is, and it's a learning experience too, and it's easy to do.
Extremely easy to do.
Shit, so freaking easy. People are so damn offended nowadays.
The best thing I could ever suggest to anybody who is struggling with that, and I do it with my own employees and I do it with anybody that I work with, is I will say, hey, are you in a position that I can speak freely? Are you in a position that I can give criticism or feedback? Essentially, you are asking for permission, just like in the military. Sir, can I speak freely? You're asking your superior officer or coworker or fellow Marine, because you were in the Marines, that you're asking permission, that can they receive that feedback? And if they tell you no, well, then you need to table it for another time and say, okay, when can I have that communication with you? Because here's the thing. You can't read minds. They can't read yours. So if you openly just speak your mind or give them feedback, but they're in a position in their own head that they're having a bad day, their cat died, their kid's sick, something, they're going to go immediately on the defense by you just speaking freely. So if you are asking, can I speak freely? Can I give some feedback? Can I give some criticism? Can I say something that may come across a little rough? You are giving that, you're asking for that permission. If they give that permission, then you have to say it tactfully, and for whatever the scenario is, then give that to them. Here's the situation. Here's my thoughts. And if they then take that and then use it against you or kind of, act, bad from it or just get emotional, then it's like, listen, I asked permission if it was okay to share this. I'm sorry that upset you, but I did ask to make sure that I could do that. So what that's essentially told me that I'm not in a place that you would allow me to do that in the future. Because again, that's a way to diffuse a situation by immediately asking permission. If they grant it, give it. And if they take it and then twist it and use it against you, well, then you have full opportunity to say, okay, I appreciate you letting me know that I can't speak freely with you in the future, because that's what has just happened. And so you're having that, again, adult, emotionally mature conversation instead of immediately just firing off. So that's anybody who struggles with that. I would try that step first and see how it goes. Because me personally, when someone asks me, hey, are you in a position that I can have a tough conversation with you? And I'm like, okay, can you give me a half hour just so I can finish up whatever I got going on in my head or finish a task or whatever? Then let me come in. Or if you're having a tough conversation with someone and you can tell maybe they're just not getting it or maybe they're emotionally charged, for the person who's giving that feedback or having that conversation, who's really in charge of that conversation, hey, listen, would you like to take a break for a moment? Would you like to process anything and then come back and continue? Because there are some people out there that they need to be able to have a break to think about whatever is being thrown at them, even if they give them permission for you to throw that at them. Some people need that time to break. Process. And if you don't acknowledge that or allow that, then essentially they feel attacked and they get stressed out. And then what do people do when they get stressed out? They explode. And then again, that causes more problems that aren't necessary. So again, talking about emotional intelligence, knowing how to have conversations with people, knowing when to take pauses, knowing when to essentially read other people's emotions when you're having those difficult conversations, to make sure that the communication is effective and it actually has meaning to it, instead of just throwing out a word salad that just pisses people off.
That's true. Yep. It's difficult to read. No, it's easy to read people. It's difficult to not allow your emotions to dictate your actions. And sometimes, like myself, I'm a fucking smart ass, dude. Like, I'll just accidentally just pour fire on shit and not even pour gas on the fire and not even realize I did it. But I've been working on that, trying not to be as big of a troll or But yeah, it's a difficult thing to navigate these waters nowadays, especially with people as they become more socially shielded with their phones and they just hold up their devices in front of them. I'm just waiting for the day where somebody says, "How dare you just walk up and talk to me like that?"
Well, and that's the biggest problem that we have with today's society is there's a lot of type warriors.
Yeah.
They are freely open to share their thoughts and opinions online. And I've dealt with that several times with the different businesses that I run, and one fairly recent, where this gentleman thought that based off of his interpretation of what he has either observed or what he thought was his truth of the situation, without having any conversation with me, decided to act inappropriately, say some things that were inappropriate and wrong. And essentially, it was my responsibility to say, hey, listen, if you'd like to have a conversation with me about what's going on and certain things that are actual facts, here's my phone number. You can feel free to call me anytime, or I'd be happy to meet with you for coffee. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to sit there and yell at the dude. I'm going to give him purely what the facts are and what the education, so he can actually make a decision on was his actions wrong or not. Yeah. But here's the thing. That's me showing emotional intelligence. Mm-hmm. Individuals who lash out or go off of information without actually going to the source, that just shows lack of emotional intelligence. And a lot of those individuals that are going through a lot of different things in their life, they're struggling in life, it's easier for them to lash out against scenarios or situations without gathering the facts and knowing what it is. I'm a huge open book. People can ask me anything and I'll tell them really without any emotion. Just, this is the scenario and take it how you would leave it, how you like it. Mm-hmm. But people rob people of those opportunities. They just go straight for the trolling mm-hmm. without understanding the context mm-hmm. from what they're reading. And that can be extremely dangerous. That can ruin people's lives. That can ruin businesses mm-hmm. because people jump on a bandwagon to troll without understanding really what the consequence of that action is mm-hmm. because so many people get into it. But if people would just understand, hey, we can have a discussion and speak our truths. We don't have to be friends afterwards, but maybe we can come to an understanding of each other. Doesn't mean we're going to hold hands, but if we can understand each other's truths, we can still hate each other. That's fine, but at least we'll have that common decency to understand. Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest thing is people don't want to take the time to understand things. They just want to immediately fire off on emotions because they're emotionally driven people. And unfortunately, that's one of the biggest problems I feel in today's society. Too emotionally driven.
Mm-hmm. And you can capitalize on that by building your brand. So how do you build or grow a brand?
So there's a couple different ways that you can build a brand. One, if you have a business, essentially, then you have your business or corporate brand, which is a large umbrella. But if you want to get really granular on if you're in the service industry or if you're a one-man show, the biggest thing that is a positive to the flip side, what I just talked about, that people are emotionally driven. People are more willing to work with people that they know or have an emotional connection with, whatever level that emotional connection with is. So they would rather work with an individual. They don't really care about the company, right? So to create a personal brand, especially extremely popular in today's marketing tactics, is to have that personal brand. And it's really to identify on a personal level, and this is where you have to kind of know yourself. What do you stand for? What are your, motives? Why do you do what you do? Right? And so to identify those things and then share that in a brand so that when people look at it, they can kind of look at it and be like, okay, I kind of get what this guy's about. He's interesting. I want to know more about it. Right? It's kind of what you've done with Data Miner Mike, where you have your kind of the branding is the hat. Right? And what is that hat called again?
It's a pith cover.
Pith cover, name. Right?
Yeah.
So again, people look at that and like, what is this? Mm-hmm. Right? So you've created a personal brand, and my personal brand is the guy with the fedora and the big bushy beard, right? But there's a lot more meaning. The gray beard, right? And
great
so
beard.
It's a great beard.
Gray beard.
So for the longest time, I was like, people was like, oh, that's such a great beard. That's a fabulous beard. And that's a mystical beard. Mm-hmm. And then I have a T-shirt that I would wear sometimes, and it's religious, and it says, "Y'all need Jesus" on mm-hmm. it. And someone looked at me at the grocery store one day, and it's like, "I love your shirt." And he's like, "You know what? You kind of have a biblical beard yourself." And so now, anytime someone just wants to give me a compliment on my beard, I'm like, you know what? thank you, but it's actually a biblical beard.
A Christ-like beard.
You know, it's elevated. There's meaning behind it.
Yeah.
You know, like, and so I kind of use that as like, this is the reason why I don't shave my beard, because it's biblical. It has meaning. It has purpose.
You're blessed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I was not blessed to have hair on top of my head. Just a big bushy gray biblical beard. And again, when it comes to like my brand and my logo, which essentially is kind of my face with a fedora on, kind of enigmatic type logo design where it kind of leaves interpretation. Doesn't look exactly like me because it's a lot sexier than it looks based off the logo. And again, everything has meaning behind my brand. So my brand is, again, that fedora with the beard and kind of showing the eyes that are kind of hidden a little bit because we want some sort of mystery behind the character, the avatar behind it, right? And really my personal brand came from kind of a story of rediscovering what I wanted to do. You know, I work in the mortgage industry. I have been in the finance industry since 2008 when the economy tanked. And the last several years in the mortgage and finance industry has been a tough year. You know, interest rates have been high, prices have been high. So business has been slower than it was pre-COVID levels. So me sitting and trying to figure out, what am I going to do in this industry that just sucks right now? Do I do something else? But I love what I do. I love helping people. I love what I do. So I was like, what can I do to get some energy to really get me through this change in market and propel me above everybody else? And I was like, I should have a brand. I should have a personal brand. And I had no idea what to do, right? I had no idea what would be cool or not. And so there's a story of where my brand came from. Is I was looking through photos of my grandfather, and he was one of the only males in my life. I grew up without a dad. And he was one of the only males in my life that I feel really, there was two of them, but he was one of the other ones that really gave a shit about me. And he was extremely hard on me growing up, and I never really understood why, right? And looking through photos of him and just kind of reminiscing type things. And I found a photo of him. Don't know how old he was, maybe in his 20s, early 30s. He's leaning up against the car, had his coat over his side, and he was wearing a fedora. I was like, wow, what a gangster. Like, wow, okay, all right, Gramps. And then I just started thinking about, like, man, all the mentality of men in the 20s and 30s. Now, yes, there was other issues that they had, right? But just the mentality of their words had meaning. Their handshakes were their words. They really had a lot of concepts down that if they told you they were going to do something, they were going to do it. Didn't matter what came up, they were going to make it happen. And today in this society, that type of generation of men are long gone. There's not that many that still have that old school philosophy of how they run their life. And I was like, looking at all the different movies or TV shows from that era, and I'm like, wow, I identify as that era just from how I handle my own life. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go buy a fedora and I'm going to see what it looks like. So I actually ordered a genuine fedora from Britain. It was felt and everything, and put it on. I'm like, all right, this looks great. Okay. And then I took a picture of it. And at the time I was working with some clients of mine, helping buy a house, and they're also designers. They were working on some other projects of mine for my other business. And I was like, hey, I want to do a rebrand. I want to brand myself. You want to work with me on it? I'm like, here's what I want. Pretty much take this and make it into a logo. And again, everything about my logo has meaning. Again, like I said, with the eyes, that kind of hidden, so it has that veil of mystery. And the fedora, talking about, the different times of everything had meaning to it, and your handshake meant something. And then with the beard, that it takes dedication. to grow a beard and maintain it. So you put everything together and it kind of
shave your head every day.
And yeah, well, it's every few days, right? Yeah. Sometimes I'll get lazy. I don't want to shave it every day. But discipline. It's discipline, right?
Once you commit.
Exactly. So it just created this brand that really identified who I was to the core of what I felt was my truth. And I came out with the logo and the brand and the website and the business cards and all those different things and T-shirts and different things. And people really identified. I'm like, wow, that's a super cool logo. Like, that's your brand's on point. That's super cool. To the point where I could go to finance-related events and I would wear a fedora and be like, hey, it's the fedora guy. I've seen your stuff on Facebook. You're doing pretty cool stuff.
Like my pillow guy, but the fedora guy. That's
it's the fedora guy. And I'm like, well, hey, I'm glad I'm known for something and not like, hey, there's that asshole walking again. So for me, that's kind of where my brand came from, is almost out of not desperation, but out of pure necessity. That I needed to do something for my business to survive and to actually be relevant and be more than a survival mode, but actual thriving. And so that brand came from that kind of struggle to identify of really who I was in an industry that was struggling. And ever since, I feel, because of my brand and because of the identity behind it, has really skyrocketed my business to help me get where I am, because I'm more relevant. I'm more known just by a brand. People know who I am, good, bad, or indifferent, and either they want to work with me or they don't. But they at least know of the brand because they've seen it floating around Facebook by the different events that I do, all the social media postings that I do, podcasts that I run, other things like that. So again, anybody who's wanting to start a personal brand, is you have to go through a level of self-discoverance for yourself. And it's kind of like almost like a resume, right? Without any words. So what does that personal brand mean to you? When people look at Mike Daneminer's personal brand, they're going to like, okay, all right, this guy's hunting for something. He's doing something, right? Because we can see the hat on. I'm like, okay, I can get the idea of what he's doing, but there's still some mystery behind it, right? And so that leaves up for interpretation and for conversation. And again, that's how I feel personal brands should be. It gives identifying factors of who you are, but still leaves a lot of mystery for communication. Because again, you look at any of the big corporate brands like Nike, the swoosh, like that's a hugely popular brand, but people are like, I don't know what that is. I'm like, it's a swoosh. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's so identifiable. But you can translate that to a personal brand. I'm like, okay, I get what it is, but really, what do you do? And you want those people to really ask you those questions. I get a lot of people that see my logo. I'm like, well, what do you do? That's a super cool logo. And it's like, well, hey, let me tell you what I do. But if I put, on that house, if I put a bank or a banknote or a house in there, people are going to easily identifiable what I do. But it has that good and bad. But everybody puts a house or some sort of key or something in their logos in my industry, which is way overused.
And limiting.
Yeah. So I'd rather
more than mortgage.
Yeah, and that's the thing. With my personal brand, it mainly came out of for the mortgage industry. But as I continue to evolve in multiple different avenues that I do for work, I've been considering taking that brand and having it be the umbrella brand for everything that I do. So for my my mortgage company that I have, the design and fabrication company that I run, and then or the networking company that I run. So it's all encumbered underneath that brand, essentially, doing DBAs underneath that main identity, because that's really who I am, so it just gives different aspects of my personality that you can kind of see with each different logo that I have. They're all me. They're just different sides of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that. It's kind of like Happy Madison.
Yeah.
And so what is your plan for branding out in the media space? What is your goal there?
When it comes to the media space, it's really just to become more publicly known. And again, I may have a presence here locally, but really to expand out the brand more in a more regional aspect and maybe even a national aspect. So again, it's just getting awareness to what it is. And so that I become some sort of authority figure within the spaces that I work. I'm more, wanting to navigate on the mortgage side because that's what, pays the bills. So that's something that I want to continue to grow so that when I do post blog posts, they become more relevant because they're coming from a verified source that people know and trust. But the way to do that is you have to advertise, you got to market yourself, you have to brand yourself. So the aspect of everything that I'm doing is going to get me there. It's just taking time because I'm not a huge multi-million-dollar company where I can just throw tons of ad money at things. So I'm doing it organically. So continue to grow the organic space and eventually get into some paid push to keep growing at a faster scale.
Yes. So how do you grow a brand with no money?
Well, take advantage of your free resources. There's different social media platforms. There's Instagram, there's Facebook, there's LinkedIn, there's Twitter. It's not longer Twitter anymore. It's X. Yeah. And, there's YouTube and there's probably a couple Snapchat. There's a couple other things. So creating relevant social media posts with incorporating your brand into it and just continue to post and let people know who you are and what you do and check out my brand and have people try to share things and come up again with relative things that people would want to look at. And organically, your presence will just get bigger and bigger and bigger just by organically word of mouth. It's a slow game, but it does work. And so that's how I've built my brand, is without putting any advertising money into it, is essentially living my brand. You live it every day so that when you go to events that are related to your brand, you're wearing the suit, you're wearing the hat, the fedora, you can't really take the beard off, but you have the beard, so it's recognizable. So that in that space, people will understand who you are and gravitate towards it. Because again, it's interesting, just like we said before. Not a lot of people wear fedoras. So I feel like I'm kind of lucky in that aspect on my brand, is that it's such a standout brand, in my own opinion, that people recognize it or remember it because they don't see a lot of logos or brands out there with a guy in a beard and a fedora.
I agree.
So it helps me out in that aspect. So it's trying to find something that extremely identifies who you are, but almost has a popularity to it that people would resonate with it. So it's a tricky thing to kind of find that commonality between the two. You almost have to get lucky. So I'm very lucky in the things that I have, building and growing. I have plenty of partners that I've worked with that help me grow to make sure that I'm continuing to go down the route that I want to go to.
Yeah. When I started off with the data mining mic, just walking around in public with this, I like to hear the comments, because usually I'll hear some things like, "Oh, looks like you're gonna go steal the Constitution from
National Treasure or something like that."
National Treasure shit, or I just like the little witty quips and remarks, but it's a social experiment. I'll go out with this hat on just to see.
Well, it's the same thing. Like, you've created a brand that around an inanimate object that as soon as you put it on, it creates a character. And that character is another facet of your personality, or it is your personality. And people want to know, what is this about? What is this guy doing? Right? Is he a little quirky, or is there a reason behind that? But it leaves room for conversations. If you're just walking around playing Jane, no one's going to come up to you and talk to you. So in today's society, you almost have to be different to be noticed. So if it's as simple as wearing a hat that's different, that no one wears or sees, or maybe it's you wear bright colored shoes or bright colored socks, or you wear I have a buddy of mine who likes to wear white suits or pink suits, just walking around because he knows he's going to get noticed. And that's purpose. There's a purpose behind that. And so good on you for doing that, because that shows you're trying to get out there and get people to want to get to know who you are.
Well, thanks.
Right? So it is, even if you don't think of that, it is a thing, because it does take confidence to go out there and I don't really care what people think. I'm going to wear this hat because this is who I am. And the people who want to have conversations with me, those are my people. I want to talk to them. They want to talk to me. I want to talk to them. I want to tell them who I am, what I'm about. So maybe you can build a relationship with them, because again, a personal brand is all about building a relationship with your people. Because like I said, people don't really care about what company you work with. They care about the person they're working with. So creating that personal brand bridges a connection so that you can easily build a relationship with that person and have that professional image about it as well.
Yep. And one advantage that a fedora has over this is if you covered both hats in tinfoil, I would just look crazy as fuck. But you would look classy with a tinfoil fedora.
Well, I would make sure to put it on correctly and smooth it, so
smooth it out.
So it just look like I'm having an 80s night, disco night with a fedora. It would fit right in. I'll try to find a suit or some sort of accents that would go perfectly with it. Yeah. That's why, again, I have multiple different colors of fedoras. I have black, white. I have an American flag one. I have brown, a blue one. I'm probably going to get a red one eventually.
So, yeah, every podcast I do is its own experiment in these productions, man. So, they fucking work and shit.
Yeah, and that's kind of the same aspect that I'm doing with my podcast is, again, for me, I there's a lot of hesitation for people to be on a podcast because I don't know what to talk about. And to make it easier on me, because again, I don't have a lot of time to think about questions and different stuff, right? Because everyone will be different on what I would talk to them about. And so I'll say, hey, if you have industry news that you'd like to share, we can certainly share that.
Good point.
Or if you just want to have a genuine, authentic, no script conversation where I, as the host, will say, hey, tell me who you are. What do you do, essentially, and why do you do what you do? How did you get into that? And through that conversation, I will listen, and then maybe they'll say something. I'm like, hey, you said earlier that you got into this because you remember a situation from your childhood. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What was that? And it brings into a story that maybe they had a crisis in their life where someone came in and was able to help them do something in their childhood, and that person was a real estate agent or something, right? We all have personal connections and we have a story behind what we do. So really it's to identify that person's story and their journey through whatever they want to share. Some of the conversations that I've had is people, again, someone in the real estate industry that he's been in the military who was in the military for a long time. He's been a police officer and he's been a teacher. And so he's had multiple different career paths that he's had through his life, but each one gave him a very distinct discipline. The military gave very distinct discipline. The police gave him a very distinct commitment level. And then education gave him a completely different transparency and almost patience level to have. So again, people not knowing his story would just think, he is what he is, right? But he has a huge history of every aspect that has shaped him to who he is today, right? So for me to sit with someone for a few minutes and have that conversation with them about that, that's my method, because everyone loves listening or watching people's stories because it's the human connection. We want to know about each other. And so if I can share that, that's my journey of what I like to do.
Yeah, and you're doing a really good job at it. So you got your R-Connect going, and you seem to get these guests on. And so you're a multifaceted man. So you've covered your mortgage, that you have the mortgage, and you can help people out with getting home buyers approved for a loan.
Yeah, so I help people with getting them approved for financing to either purchase a home or refinance, or just to help them with, credit repair. There's a lot of different things that I do. I have a team that I run as well, that I help train and get them going so they can be mortgage professionals in the future. But for me, it's just creating relationships, giving education to people, and just helping people out with what their dreams are. And if their dream is to buy a home, then I'm fully committed to that dream to make it happen, as long as they're understanding that I will tell them what they need to hear, not that what they want to hear, because I don't give false hopes. And then if they're wanting to refinance to help them financially in whatever way, then I will do my best to make sure that can happen for them, as long as it makes sense to them financially and on paper. And then, yes, I do have another company called R-Connect, and that is a basics of connection. That friend of mine decided that, hey, his name's Nick Allard. He's been on here before.
Yeah.
And said, Nick, I have an idea. With how busy we are in our businesses, for me to personally to get to know people and be out there, I got to do a lot of different networking events. And that's a lot of time, gas, there's energy that I just don't have. So what happens if we just create one? What do you think? And he's like, I think you're nuts. I'm like, okay, let's do it. And so we just decided to create something called R-Connect, which is a multi-level networking venue that we have that, again, we're going to be changing the format for next year, really ramping a lot of things up. So we have 3 events that we do per month. 2 of them are just general networking. We go meet at a business location and we network at that location for a couple hours with other business owners and try to help that business out. So we really try to identify businesses that could really use the exposure, and we try to fill the space as much as we can and buy goods from them to help that business out. And then the other one is we bring in guest speakers to speak every 3rd Thursday to, again, not really to teach us about their product or their service or to give some sort of skill set. It's really to listen to their story and their journey, because anybody in life can look at someone else and say, that person's made it. They're successful. But you don't know their story. You don't know their journey. You don't know how far they've come. So to sit there and start from the beginning of when they first started and when they've messed up throughout their whole entire path of their journey to get where they are today, hopefully the audience will find golden nuggets of like, wow, I had no idea that person struggled so much to get this business going. Or wow, I'm struggling with the same thing and this person got through it. Maybe I can talk to them more and give me some advice. Or it's as simple as, I think I had it bad. This person had it pretty bad. I can get over my own stuff pretty quickly and find inspiration from this person's story and journey to grow themselves. So that's the premise of the R-Connect 3rd Thursday event. We're going to be switching the format going forward for next year, where we actually have just one of those a quarter, so we can have pretty high quality speakers come in once a quarter to share their story. And then we're going to be focusing on a couple different initiatives starting next year. Same 3rd Thursday event style, but just going into a different aspect to provide more value and more variety to give people opportunities for connection and build relationships. We don't want to be the organization that just people show up, here's my business card, call me. We don't want to have that type of atmosphere and culture. We want to have purely authentic relationship building connections. My biggest phrase that I'll ever use in my life is there is longevity in relationships. If you want to build a long-term career, a long-term business structure, long-term partnerships, long-term clients, do not treat it as a transaction. If you do, transactions, it starts from here, ends there, and that's it. Treat people as a relationship. Build friendships, build relationships, because then it's longevity.
Mm-hmm.
And even if that person never uses you for their business or for your business or service or product, but you've built a relationship with them so that maybe down the road they have a friend, family member, coworker who is looking to take advantage of something that is in your service realm, that they'll think of you because you built a relationship with them. You didn't treat them like a transaction, like a number.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a slower game, but you'll last longer in it than the ones who are treating their industry as like a cash grab, car salesman mentality, where it's just turn and burn as fast as you can. So everything that I do is to build relationships with people, and our Connect is kind of a mirror of that, is to hopefully create an environment where people actually spend the time getting to know people and actually building authentic relationships that expand beyond business.
Yeah. Which brings up a good point. What's the difference between a businessman or woman and a salesman?
So there's two distinct differences between the two. Usually a business individual, they have a business mindset to them. They think about what they're going to do, and they have a goal or a mission to accomplish with that. And they think more on a high level of all the different opportunities to help grow something or do something. A salesman is really just trying to sell you a product or a service. They don't really care about the outcome or what it could really do for them in a positive or negative. They're just trying to get that sale. Mm-hmm. That's the benefit for them. So in my aspect, a salesperson is really out for themselves. Mm-hmm. They're here to sell a product, to sell a service. And so I'll never consider myself a sales professional or anything like that, because I don't sell people anything. I give them education freely, and I build relationships with them. And so that if they're going to use me or whatever thing that I do, that I've provided them education, which builds trust, and I've built a relationship with them so that they'll be more willing to use me in the future for whatever purpose it is. And that when I do give them feedback or give them ideas, they'll actually have trust and knowledge that I'm giving them the right information, and they feel empowered to make their own choices. Mm-hmm. Salespeople, they just say, hey, this is your option. This is your best thing. Sign here, right? I kind of dumbed it down, but that's kind of what I think of salespeople, is they don't sit here and actually go through the whole process and explain all the different options available to them. And even if they are salespeople and they are really good at what they do and they educate and do all those things, then I don't consider those salespeople. Consider them educators. Now, yes, they may sell something like a car, because if you boil down to it, I sell mortgages, but I don't say I do that because I don't like identifying as a salesperson, because that mentality doesn't fit who I am. Mm. Yeah. So you can be a sales individual, but you can identify as something else in the aspect of, hey, I help people, search or identify or educate them on what is the best car for them, and I help find that for whatever position they are in their life. Mm-hmm. Right? It doesn't really matter if I'm selling them the $10,000 car or the $50,000 car. What works best for them in their life and in their current situation. So I help provide the education to make sure that they're making the right decision and they feel empowered, comfortable with that. Because you never want to have someone who has that buyer's remorse because they didn't understand what they were getting themselves into.
Well, how do you become competitive or survive in your industry? Where do you get the customers from?
So really, you have two different questions there.
Yeah.
So really, when I get my clients from and my relationships is being out in the public, is just building relationships, going to people to talk to, and just slowly building relationships with people, or having them on the podcast, or just having meetings with them. And really my bread and butter and where my relationships come from is other people in the real estate industry or finance industry, just all sister connected relationships. In my past sphere, my own clients, my own family and friends that I've built relationships, and they know what I do. I don't sit there and shove it down their throat every month. Like, hey, don't forget, I do mortgages. I don't do that. They know what I do. And so, there's no reason for me to bring it up every conversation I have with them. So every conversation I have with a real estate partner or an acquaintance, it's never about, hey, when can you send me a lead? It's like, hey, how's the family? Mm-hmm. What have you done this summer? I've seen some great pictures on Facebook. I'm there to build a relationship. And they see that, and they turn. If they choose to work with me, that's great. If not, that's cool too. They'll think of me when someone they're working with messes up, or they need a second opinion. I'm there, whatever you need. And then what was the first question?
Oh, I think you nailed it. Well, yeah.
To be competitive. So I work in a highly, competitive industry. But again, if you educate people, build trust, they're going to feel educated and trust that you're going to give them the best option that is available to them. And I'll be very upfront. It's like, listen, I'm not the most expensive. I'm not the cheapest. I'm in that middle ground. But what you're getting is ultimate good service. Now, if you want the best rate or best price, something's going to have to give from that. And it's probably going to be half the service, because I'm going to have to do other things to make sure that I can meet the quota that needs to be happening. Now, am I the most expensive? No, not at all. I do that on purpose to make sure I am competitive. But again, looking at everyone's scenario is completely different when they're buying a home or refinancing their financial situation. Everyone is completely unique in that aspect. And say, listen, here's some options available to you. Depending on how aggressive you want to be on your payment or this scenario, we'll judge on what path you choose to go down. Mm-hmm. So if they want an aggressive rate where it's super cheap, but it's going to cost extra, maybe that makes sense for someone to invest up front on a lower interest rate. But if they don't have a ton of money, or if it just doesn't make sense, and it's like, listen, I know that you may be talking to another lender who said, hey, they can get you this rate, but it's going to cost you $10,000 in fees to get that rate. Now, rates are going down. So most likely in 1 to 2 years, you're going to refinance anyways and get a lower rate than that. So why would you pay $10,000 up front to get a rate that you're probably going to refinance for a lower rate in the future anyways? So why don't you find a middle ground? Why don't you try to find something that you're not having to pay so much for, and you're still okay with that payment rate? Because full expectation, you're going to get rid of that rate in a few years. You're going to keep the house, but you're going to get rid of that rate. So I had a scenario where another lender quoted this really good rate to someone, but didn't tell them how much it was going to cost them to get that rate. And they were sent something called a loan estimate. And that loan estimate showed they had to come up with an extra like $7,000, $6,000 at closing. They don't have that money. So they wanted me to look at it, and I said, hey, listen, they bought down your rate a ton, and they're making you pay for it, which I can do the same thing, but you've told me you don't have that money. So here's the next best thing. We up your interest rate a little bit. It only changes your payment $50 a month, but now your cash to close is only $1,000 that you need to bring at closing. Is that more attractive to you? Yeah. Well, I got that loan. I didn't have the best rate, but I had the best service that made for that client's situation. Mm-hmm. Now, I could have offered the same rate and same fee structure, but that wasn't what for the client's best interest. So it's knowing what's in your client's best interest and using that, leading that with your focus.
Okay, well, given that, on the world of data, I take it you have access or subscriptions do you have access or subscriptions to the credit companies?
So we do pull credit scores on clients. So yes, we do pull credit on every individual that we talk to, unless they tell us specifically not to. But
how much is that subscription every year?
So it's not a subscription. It's a per cost per client. So it depends on what they're looking to do. There's multiple different ways to pull credit. You can do a soft credit pull, where either I'm getting charged or I'm charging the client, depending on the situation, about $20, $30. That does a soft credit pull. It doesn't fully affect your credit score as like a hard pull would be. Now, a hard pull is where we're pulling everything. Well, that can be $70 to $100, either that I'm paying for, or the lender that I'm working with, because I'm a broker, pays for, or the client pays for it. So it's not a monthly or yearly subscription. But let's say, for example, if each credit report that I'm pulling is, say, like $100, and let's say I looked at 10 applications a month, which on average that's what I do. Well, that's again $1,000 in credit pulls. So either I'm paying $1,000 a month to pull those, or each individual client is paying for their credit pull for each time, or I'm partnering with a lender as a broker that they will cover the cost of it as long as I use them for lending. So it's finding that balance of what works best. Mm-hmm. And again, having that expectation up front with your clients and say, for me, hey, listen, I do charge for upfront credit pulls. You're a very specialized type of loan that we have to look into. And so they do charge for that upfront. Are you okay with that? And if they tell me I'm not okay with $30 getting paid, like you'll get reimbursed after closing, or it'll get deducted off your closing costs. If they're not okay with me charging $30 just to pull their credit,
don't buy a home, man.
Yeah, it's like, okay.
Why am I talking to you?
Yeah, it's like okay, like $30, like that's just pizza. Like seriously, like that's your barrier. So I try to eliminate as much barriers as I can. But again, being an independent broker, it comes down to, what's the best in my interest for my business to make sure I can keep my overhead down. Now, if I'm having to charge myself or my branch every single credit report fee that I have to, pull, well, then I have to offset that somehow. And how do I do that? I have higher interest rates than other people to offset the cost that's coming in. So that if I'm charging $1,000 a month toward my credit card for credit pulls as an independent broker, well, then I got to make that up with a little bit higher interest rate. So on the loans that I do close, that it's paying that credit card off, and it's not coming out of the total that would be going to either my business account or me personally.
Shit, I'm just thinking with all that, you could probably get the data streams directly from Equifax, Experian, TransUnion.
And those are who we pull from.
And then just pay the yearly subscription fee. You might be selling more. You might even be able to make money on it.
So there's a lot of laws that are in with that, that there has to be a lot of different credentials that you have to have. And again, it's either you, as a mortgage company, either you have credentials, but it's per pull that you get charged for. It's not a yearly subscription or anything like that. It's pull per client. And if you have to pull it multiple times or you have to do other things with it, it's every single time is a charge because there's an act of it. So there is no monthly subscription fee that you get unlimited credit pulls or anything like that. It's a total every time you do it. So either you work with a lender that will do it for you on that aspect. They'll pay for it. They'll cover the cost of it because they have the coffers to have that expense. Or I pay for it for whatever reason I choose to, or the client pays for it up front. And if the client has an issue paying for $30 just for a soft credit pull to kind of see what they qualify for, I'm almost questioning, should you be buying a home?
Yeah.
At that point.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just kind of, I try to find each scenario what works best for someone.
Yeah. Well, I know from my personal experience, I had a home that went into foreclosure when I got divorced. It sucked. It was
And
rough for
that's
me.
common what happens.
Yeah, I lived homeless for a year out of my vehicle while going to school and everything. It was really rough. And luckily, that wasn't on my credit because the lender forgave that because of the equity that was already in it. So it was like 20 grand equity.
Yeah, a lot of times the bank, when it goes into a foreclosure aspect, if it goes into foreclosure and if that bank can sell it for more than what the note is left on it, usually they'll say, hey, we won't report it as foreclosure because they got their money back. And that's all they really care about. Now, if it was reverse where, you had 20 grand left over to pay, well, then that's a full foreclosure and that's going to hit your score and everything like that because you still owe them money and they're writing it off. So they're going to hit you for it. So yeah, going through divorce is a, stressful thing just in its own. I've been there, been there, done that. But when you add in, you may have had to use 2 incomes to qualify for the home and now you only have 1. Well, that means you can't really pay it no more. Right. And then if you don't know what to do from there, people just, again, let it go into foreclosure before they're able to sell it. Because here's the thing that could have saved that whole entire scenario, depending on situation with the other spouse and if it was agreeable to do. But if the bank was able to sell it on their own and have 20 grand equity, they sold it at pretty much bottom dollar just to get rid of it. They're not in the business of selling real estate. They don't make money on it. So if you were to have a list agent and actually sell your house on the market, then there could have been a lot more equity to play with that could have gone to each spouse to pay off their debt or to help them in the future. So that's a lot of things where I'm talking to my own clients who are going through these situations like, hey, I totally understand, but letting it go into foreclosure is going to cause a lot more issues with future approvals, future financial decisions. Is there an opportunity to talk to a list agent and the spouses can be separate and see how much you can sell the home for and do it that way? And even if you sell it on the aspect of wanting to just get out of it, you're in a better position doing that.
Yeah, that makes sense. As long as the lender's winning. So where do you guys have subscriptions to the lab corporations around here for the blood and semen samples?
No, we don't do any of that stuff.
Oh, you don't?
Nope. We just pure credit scores.
Oh.
No biological samples needed.
Huh. Well, that's strange. Why do they want my semen cryogenically frozen?
Well, I don't know what company you're talking to, but it's definitely not a mortgage lender.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of the joke of it. Like all that stuff. But yeah, so shit, man, we've been going on an hour 15. Is there anything else going on in your heart?
No, just looking at all my messages and emails, and I'm like, I got to get back to work.
Yeah, no. So are you thinking about just two more things? Stand-up comedy. You ever going to do it?
I don't think I'm funny enough to do that. I may be funny looking, but not that funny.
I don't know.
It depends on how much alcohol is being served at the event for people to attend, because I'm sure if you pump enough people full of alcohol, anything I say will be funny. So never thought about it. And, maybe if my other businesses don't work out, maybe I'll look into future endeavors into the comedy sector.
Yeah. Well, then, second to last question, book recommendations.
There's a book that I'm reading right now, and I'm always about reading books, and it's called The Best Damn Ship in the Navy. And it's a Navy captain, and he goes in and finds the worst ship in the Navy and makes it into the best one. And again, it's going in there and teaching you about leadership skills and how to communicate and how to just think differently. So that's the book that I'm reading right now. I enjoy it because it gives little tidbits of things that I can apply to my own life, either personally or business-wise. So anybody who's looking to grow in life, they should always be reading, and don't be reading this Harry Potter stuff, sci-fi things. Like, that's cool and all, but it's not really doing anything for your mind. Mm-hmm. So reading those books on how to buy back your time, or how to be a better leader, or how to be a better communicator, it's really going to help you in the long run of developing who you are as a person and actually growing to where you want to go.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. So the best ship in the Navy.
The best damn ship in the Navy.
Best
yep.
damn ship in the Navy. So the last and probably of the more important questions, where can people find you?
It's pretty easy. So I have 3 different websites that you can go to. You can go to ShawnRLloyd.com. That's my mortgage, essentially. So ShawnRLLoyd. You can also go to info.rconnectevents.com for all the RConnect things that we work on. And then for my other company, which we'll maybe have to do a episode 2 down the road, is my design and fabrication company.
Yeah.
And that's just
that's
just called creodesigns.com.
Yeah, you got some kick-ass stuff.
Yep. So I don't focus on that business as much as I have in the past, just because it's more of a hobby project for me. Mm-hmm. And I only do it when I have time, and when someone word of mouth says they want something. And then usually I'll try to give the I don't really want to do it price, and if they accept it, then it looks like I have to do it.
Yeah.
But I don't advertise just because I don't have the time to do it. I need to focus on other things that actually are priority.
Yeah.
So maybe down the road I'll pick up that business more. It usually comes in seasons, usually during the winter when I'm not doing projects outside in the yard and I just want more things to do and I don't want to be sitting on the couch all damn day. On the weekend, then I'll use that and go play with some fire.
Yeah.
But usually just sits idle until it's ready.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
I'll have to introduce you to some other people then in the future.
There we go. Well, I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. And I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast as much as I did. Be sure to check out all of Shawn's links in the video description below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and smash that motherfucking bell for more updates. Bye.
Peace out.